Okay, thanks for tuning in, everybody, uh, and Happy New Year. This is episode 2, attempt number 2 at my talk show. And the way this worked yesterday is probably how it's going to work today, where I'm not really going to look at the live chat until I'm done with the main points that I want to talk about, because it's a little too distracting. So I guess I'll look at it for a minute and let me know if the audio is okay or if anything should be adjusted. But yeah, and then in a minute I will get into it. So thanks for tuning in. And if you like this and you know anyone who might be interested in listening to it, these are archived on the YouTube channel afterwards. They're not under videos, they're under live, which is a separate tab. So they'll all be there if anyone wants to listen afterwards. Please do send it to people. I assume that was pretty audible. This is a really ASMR microphone. I re-listened to a little bit of the stream yesterday. That's good. Yes, send it to everyone you match with on Tinder. And there's some minor mouth sounds that get through. I was listening with really detailed headphones too, I guess. So, and I'm also a little sick. I woke up this morning. I woke up this morning out of a sleep paralysis nightmare where I was asleep on my floor where I sleep, and it was like I was awake but I couldn't move, and I just heard wings flapping in my room as if there were birds or just one or two birds or bats in my room. So I was trying to wake up and wave them away, but I couldn't move because I was sleep paralyzed. So that always sucks. To me, it always feels like I'm suffocating when that happens. So it sucks. And then I woke up and I felt way sicker than I felt yesterday. So I was like my throat was in so much pain that I was like, okay, there's just no way I can actually follow through and do the show today. But over the course of the day, I feel pretty fine. My throat doesn't feel good, and I need to drink water every minute at least while I'm talking. But yeah, pretty I don't know, it'll be fine. So I probably won't talk for super long. Yesterday we hung out for 3 hours until it turned into the new year. I don't plan on doing that, but who knows. So yeah, any audio adjustments, just let me know and I'll get into it in a moment. Nice. Yeah, you guys should talk to I'm avoiding saying everyone's name because these are just going to be archived, but you guys should all be friends with Mr. 11 there. Yeah. That's a lot of my friend group is in the chat right now. So before, I kind of want to talk about going into the new year. Yesterday I was talking about all these observations I was having over the course of the past year, and the way my observations were informing how I was thinking about how people were feeling and what people were doing in their lives and where we were going at this quarter way through the century and halfway through the decade point, and as we're all getting older and hardening up. So into our eventually your personality's pretty set. So anyway, so today I want to talk more about looking forward, how I'm thinking about going into the new year and things I'm trying to keep in mind to keep me sane and keep me healthy and also keep me capable and like I'm actually working and fulfilling my potential. I'm not impotent or sloth-like or pathetic, I guess, or like inspiring pathos or pity. And yeah, just all techniques and things to keep in mind to sort of avoid feeling all the negative dragging down that comes with being in our society, like just all these elements of the vector fields that negatively influence how you feel and who you become and how you interact and what you do. So yeah, but before I get into that, I wanted to share a couple observations, or at least one, because I noticed something after I finished streaming last night where I'll host lectures occasionally. I've done that over the past year, and I'll invite people over, and it's nice, and I'll make food, and it's a pleasant social event that I put work into making. I put work in so that it is a pleasant experience for everyone and is able to alleviate some of the issues that our society presents us, such as not having not having any healthy places to hang out. I hate the term, not to go on a tangent, but I do hate the term third space, because that is such a like everyone, things are bad when you start trying trying to identify the concept of like places people can just exist together, and you're like, oh well, there's work and there's home, like 1, 2, 3. Let's just call that number 3. It just feels so abstract and categorical, and like, okay, well, what about 3 spaces? I know it's part of the parlance now, but I think it shouldn't be. I think we should avoid saying third space at all costs, and instead just create some. And that's one thing I try to do, where I try to get a bunch of people who don't necessarily know each other, who I think might get along with each other, together in my home. And that's something a lot of us are able to do. And but it's hard. To work against the inertia and make stuff like that happen is difficult, but I think it is worthwhile. And anyway, so yeah, and well, the other element of it is having music or a lecture or whatever it is that people can pay attention to for a sustained period of time, like not be on the phone, just be like paying attention, and then afterwards conversing with each other and reflecting together. So there's a lot of different ways that is I think those sorts of get-togethers have healing properties that a lot of us need. And anyway, so yeah, I'll put in all the work to do those things. And lately, like at the most recent ones, I'll just give a lecture for like an hour. And after the lecture, and people will hang out for a few hours afterwards. And then as soon as people leave, I have this like desperate urge to check my phone or go on the internet. And it like so intensely, like way more intensely than I usually feel it. And sometimes I will do that earlier on, but I once I recognized how intense and different that urge is after those very positive social experiences, I just started reflecting on it a little more, and now I really try to avoid doing that. And the same thing happened yesterday, and I did go on my phone, and you just like waste so much time looking at stuff that you just don't even really remember. And that's unfortunate. So just I guess the point I want to make about this is not to put it purely in terms of like good and evil, but they're really like we're capable of a lot of different things, and there's lots of different desires and drives. There's lots of drives within us that want different things, and some want things that are good for us, some want things that are bad for us. And for example, I mean, this is very obvious with different addictions where it's like, oh man, I wish I could quit smoking because it really hurts my throat or something. And but then you just keep smoking. So there's obvious examples, but then there's very, very subtle examples. There's things that don't even enter into your mind at all. And if I weren't kind of trying to be extra aware of these things, maybe I wouldn't even notice the desire to go on the phone because I would just check my phone and it would just be a normal thing that I'm doing. But it's not. So yeah, so there's something that sticks out to me about how intensely I feel that after I do something very positive for myself and for other people, very like pro-social, where like it's almost as if like this, I don't know, I don't personally have like a framework for understanding this or a terminology or anything. Like I think of like some people would describe the death drive or this urge to do things that are actually bad for you. And other people may talk about demonic influence or the influence of the devil versus the will to do like God's will or things like that. There's different frameworks you could have for this, the things that affect our free will and pull us in one direction versus another. But I just think it's interesting that after I do something that I consider to be very good and that people have expressed to me is helpful to them and sometimes very important to them, that afterwards I have this extreme drive in the other direction where it's like, it's almost like begging me to wipe my memory of whatever just happened and go back to I mean, sometimes I just think of the phone as like a memory wiping device because in order to develop your memory is like a part of your whole being. So you have to be like engaged in action and reflection over time for those impressions to really stick with you, especially if you want them to develop in a complex way and you want to really like reflect on them and like do something better the following time or understand a certain conversation you had with someone and maybe what it might mean about the position that they're in. So yeah, so it feels like such a counterbalance where it's like, okay, you do this great thing and then the most evil parts of you that like, or the parts of you that want you to just like be nothing are just like, please, like go on your phone. You have to go on your phone. It's like they throw their entire mass towards you doing the thing that's bad for you, especially whenever you're doing something good, whenever you're actually like on a path that is like respectable or important or like you're helping yourself or other people, doing things that are good. Anyway, so I felt a little bit of that last night. And I gave in, and I watched some dumb bullshit about YouTube engagement, and because I guess I'm a YouTuber now. I didn't really think about that going into this until, because all the preparation, like I don't actually interact with YouTube at all. I'm just like setting up a camera and like setting up my streaming software, and then until like 2 days ago, YouTube wasn't involved at all, and now I'm like, damn, I have to think about YouTube. Yeah, I don't know if there's not really anything else I wanted to get to before that. So I didn't do much preparation for this just because I felt really sick today. I felt good. I went out for a minute and I went to mass and it was like freezing outside. And that kind of woke me up in a nice way. So I wrote some preparatory stuff earlier, and I'll take a look at that and just kind of read it aloud. Maybe together by the end we'll have something of a New Year's resolutions list, things to do, things to not do, things to keep in mind, things to encourage other people to protect themselves from. And Yeah, there. I also wanted to pull out a reading, but I guess I'll do that at the end, just if we're killing time or something, because I didn't look up which verse of the Tao Te Ching it was, but it is relevant, as that book often is. So I guess I will just get into it here. In the future, I don't really want... I mean, I don't know if I'll really be reading... I'm not really going to read off my computer, hopefully. Hopefully, I'll just kind of like review the notes and ramble a little bit. Yeah. Well, oh yeah, the other thing I was just going to mention, it seems like the audio's maybe a tiny bit hot sometimes. I guess just a recap of yesterday to start. Not a full recap, but just of a couple things that we talked about. I read two relevant things yesterday. And one was just a verse from the Tao Te Ching to end the night and think about the new year that had just started. And the other was Patrick Henry's speech at the Virginia Convention in 1775, which is the "Give us liberty or give us death" speech. Here you've got Patrick Henry and Barack Obama in this American Speeches book. Anyway, yeah, and I was just by reading that, I wanted to emphasize the urgency that Patrick Henry is bringing to the convention at that point, because the way that he describes it, I don't know who was speaking before him, but he was speaking, or as he starts his speech, he's like, let me, like, I really respect everyone who's spoken before me, but let me disagree. And I think the nature of their disagreement is all of those people were expressing hope about the American situation and about the possibility of achieving peace with the British. And they, and yeah, he goes on to say, I don't know how you can be hopeful here, because like you really have to soberly and strategically assess our situation, because look at all the preparations that are being made. Like, sure, the British, they're now kind of claiming to entertain our designs and like entertain new agreements with us where we have maybe a little more sovereignty. But you've got to look at what they're doing. Like they're still being violent against our citizens, and they're amassing ships off of our coasts in a way where you would think they have an enemy around here. And are there any enemies around here? Not really, not to that extent. Like, I think all of these things are for us, and I think to ignore them and to be hopeful because people are expressing something hopeful to us is to ignore the reality. And I see a lot of parallels with our own time there, where I feel like people don't even seem particularly hopeful. I think most people are just kind of highly disoriented in a way that makes them neutral necessarily. So you kind of, you still wind up being, as Patrick Henry describes, like people who can't see what's in front of them or hear what's around them. And he's saying, like, we can't join those people. We need to see what we see. And we're not crazy for believing that, like, war is upon us and potentially slavery is upon us. Because when you think about, I don't know a whole lot about this, but think about British colonization elsewhere. I mean, Ireland, for example, but in India or in the West Indies, and how brutal it was. And that was not the case in, like, the United States was a special situation, but the brutality that the British Empire was capable of, I don't think there's any reason they couldn't have turned that against the colonies. Like, I mean, they went to war with them ultimately. I could also imagine them becoming, despite being of the same stock mostly and the same race, like being a subordinate colony, like a colony in the true, totally oppressed sense. So that should be a fear. And in our own situation, everyone's aware of companies like Palantir and like the defense industry and the intelligence agencies, and also just evil nations' actions in the world, and increased militarization of the police and surveillance cameras being everywhere. You have to look at these things soberly and think, what is this for? Like, this is not for me. This is not for my goodwill, certainly. It is it is for me. It's not for my goodwill or the goodwill of anybody that I love or that I live with or that I care about in my country. So these norms move slowly over time, but you get adjusted to them, and suddenly there's surveillance cameras everywhere. And well, really, there's a great line in the speech where he talks about, like, well, when are we going to be stronger than we are now? We have to prepare to fight. You know, are we going to be stronger when they just put a British guard in every one of our houses? And it's like, well, that's your smart devices, it's your phone, it's your computer. And not only from a spying element, but a changing your behavior, from a changing your behavior perspective. Because these things do change who you are. They change what you think. They change what you say. And you may say, like, well, I'm never saying anything that I wouldn't want to be overheard. I guess I don't know who would really say that. I don't want anything I say. Well, I'm live streaming, but, you know, I don't want anything I say in private to be overheard or recorded forever and eventually dug up later. Sorry, I'm going to go on another tangent. These early streams are going to have a lot of tangents in them just because I need to just get it all out. So I'm just going to get it all out. And the tangent is, oh shit. Actually, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Sorry. Hang on. Phone in the house. I don't know. I was talking about just like the potential that you're listened to. But anyway, I had something else to say, but when you are potentially just being recorded, it changes what you say on a subconscious, in an unconscious level. Like, you don't even know that it's changing you over time. The more and more you use these devices and get used to mediating in a certain way. Oh yeah, I remember the tangent. The tangent is just like, the NSA has been recording information forever, and until like the past 5 years, that was really difficult to search. So now with like the advancement of large language models, you can do more advanced processing of data, all data, but especially textual and speech information, which are now the same because you can just transfer speech into text. And yeah, so it does matter that everything you've ever said on a phone call, say, has been recorded and archived, because say 20 years from now, you're an enemy of the state or something, like, you can just have all of those things dug up on you. And like any little crime you ever committed or something, like, there's a whole world of reference material for the data brokers and the intelligence agencies. There's a whole, like, there's just a whole, it's a copy of the world, essentially. It is an attempt to be a copy of the social world, and that can be weaponized against anybody if the people who are able to wield it decide that it ought to be weaponized against somebody. So that's the tangent. And yeah, the import of the speech is like, I do think we have to be serious and be sober about how bad things really can be. Because another thing is, like, slavery wasn't that long ago, and it wasn't abolished because, like, the major owners of all the assets in the world or something are all, like, more moral people now. There's economic reasons for the abolition of these things. And you can, as technology develops, like, I don't see slavery as being ruled out. Actually, I think in a certain sense, we live under a type of psychological slavery where we're just sort of like socialized or enculturated into roles that primarily take away any power over our lives that we have and siphon it away to actual sort of move makers in the world, people who have world building power through their position or their assets or whatever it may be. But anyway, I think physical slavery is not ruled out either. I don't think we're in a moral order, and I don't think that the next order is necessarily going to be any more moral. It could be even more physically degrading. Yeah. So that's the thing with the Patrick Henry speech. It is kind of like, I think we kind of do have to look at it as a little bit of a give me liberty or give me death thing, because like, are things looking good to anyone? No. Like, nobody I talk to seems particularly helpful, except maybe a certain niche of tech academia people, but they're really in a type of bubble. Anyway, so yeah. So I think we just have to keep that in mind. Another thing he says in there is the war has already begun. And of course it hadn't physically, like, no battles had occurred yet. But that concept is important. The wars can begin before you even know that they've begun, and you have to start behaving in a way where you are respecting the severity of what that means for all of the people you love and yourself and the world and humanity. So I would like to keep that in mind as we go into the year, because I would love to see over the course of my life increased potential for people to be able to live dignified human lives. And over the course of my whole relatively short life thus far, it has been the potential for people to live dignified lives has just been going down. And there's immense suffering all over the globe. And I worry about how incoherent people are becoming in the first world nations, because we really do have power in a certain way, in that we really have a relative wealth and access to technology and access to influence that is unparalleled. And if you can actually get smart and be able to communicate to the people around you and be able to act in strategic ways that provide for the future of the people around you, you can make a difference. And I feel like there's so much in my generation and around me, like in my generation, there's a lot of apathy or laziness or impotence or just learned helplessness. And I feel like in the older, like Boomer and Gen X generations, there is a type of blindness with respect to how bad things really are. And there's also a blindness with respect to their own potential to alleviate those things, because those generations are much wealthier than mine on average. And that wealth goes an extremely long way. In America, it's become pretty common for parents to, like, there's been a fracturing of support within families. Like, families aren't engaged in, like, intergenerational, they don't have, like, intergenerational goals. Like, it feels much more nihilistic than even just, like, wanting to meet your great grandkids, and, like, you want what's best for your grandkids because you want to meet your great grandkids, and you can function strategically as a family unit, as an extended family unit, to be like, yeah, we're all helping each other out. We're helping out our neighbors. We want to live. I think something broke along the way in there, where people are just kind of like ignorant to how much they are really neglecting their potential to help other people, or to even just be real with other people, or be real with themselves. So yeah. So that's the word of the year for me, is strategy. I think is just like really assess what's going on and assess what you want. Go into your heart, go into your friends, like go into your hearts together, figure out what you really believe. I think there's a lot of, like, if you're intellectually inclined at all, there's a lot of responsibility that we have in our current situation. It's not I think about the memes that are like born too late to sail across the oceans, born too early to explore space, born just in time to, like, go on my phone or something. And it's like, no, this is this is like such a pivotal moment in human history, and we actually have a lot of potential, and I think a lot of responsibility to live up to in this moment. And I don't agree at all with any sort of like hedonistic or nihilistic takes on what we should be doing with our time. So yeah, that was the one reading, Patrick Henry. It's like 3 pages long. Should read it. If we're hanging out later, I could read it again if there's new people in the chat. And the other thing I read was just a verse from the Tao Te Ching that I like about virtue. Virtue being kind of like the way that, if you're familiar with Taoism at all, Tao is often translated as the path or the way. It's the way that moves through you, and all these words kind of have multiple definitions depending on whether you're talking about it like metaphysically, politically, psychologically. But more or less, virtue is that alignment with the Tao within the human realm of experience. Because a tree, it's easy for a tree to be aligned with the Tao. The tree doesn't have free will in the way that we do, certainly. A stone is a stone. Very easy to be aligned with the Tao. But people have become so we've strayed so far from the path that, and become, I mean, especially like the past 100 years, we've been like converted into like unrecognizable animals, just pressuring ourselves into such strange and traumatized psychological existences. And yeah, so it's difficult for us to be aligned with the Tao. It's like, well, what does that even mean? I can't just like I can't just start, and I can't even just start from like withdrawing necessarily. I think withdrawing is a, like, say, meditating or sensory deprivation, or trying to isolate yourself in a way that brings out certain thoughts that you otherwise would never pick up on because of the stimulation of perception and of socialization. That is sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, well, yeah, even if you're doing that, it's like that's just you kind of trying to figure it out. Like you're not suddenly like a real, you're not, I don't know, it's a very delicate and difficult process to be to be at peace and act in ways that are not striving. So I read another thing from that just about virtue that I've been thinking about in relation to this upcoming, actually we're in it, this upcoming year, this year that we're in. So let me see if I can find that. I am blanking on what Roman numerals are. Actually, I'm not totally sure what number it is. But the essence of it is this idea of trying to cultivate virtue at these different levels, because I think we have this individual responsibility to cultivate it within ourselves. And then as you do that, things around you start to reflect that as well. I sort of think of like planets orbiting each other in a sense, where it's like, if you are able to cultivate this virtue, it has kind of a gravitational pull that affects the things around you, and it affects other people, and you should be encouraging other people to do so as well. So it's encourage virtue in the self, encourage virtue in the family, in the village, in the nation, on the earth. I don't remember it verbatim. And I think that like if we're hanging out at the end, I could read that as well. And that tessellates a little bit with a verse from the end of the Quran. It's like its own short little surah prayer, where I'll just say the whole thing because it's, well, in the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy, is how all of those start. By the fading day, man is deep in loss, except for those who believe, do good deeds, urge one another to the truth, and urge one another to steadfastness. And that's also something I would keep in mind in this year, especially those things where it's urging each other. It's a mutual it's a communal thing that we both have, like you and I, we both have this responsibility to hold each other to that, to hold each other, to urge one another to the truth, urge one another to steadfastness, and then in our own lives to believe and to do good deeds. So believe in the good and allow that belief in the good to guide your deeds and be virtuous. So that's on my mind for the year. And well, that's just the preamble. That's not what I was going to talk about. So we can get into it in a minute. More ASMR. Okay. All right, so these are not in order. I didn't refine them. This was just kind of like some stream of consciousness writing I was doing on one side, and then on the other side, when I thought of something relevant to going into the new year, I wrote it on the other side. So there's not, let me see if this gets in the way of the camera. Okay. Don't want to block the shot. Okay, so here's something I've been thinking about that I would like to keep in mind over the course of the year, because I think people have been really lapsing in their potential to communicate in earnest with each other or in good faith with each other. I think this is especially obvious on the internet in general, but also like political talk in general in our current society. And maybe one way I'll put this is communicating on the internet in general is like, I think I will turn YouTube. Nobody has commented on these videos actually, but on the other ones, I turned comments off. And the reason I do that is because I think even if the comments were great, I think it's like bad for us to think in the comments. I think it's bad for us to think in tweets or in Instagram posts or in Instagram stories. I think when you have access to that type of expression, and, I'm not writing off the mediums entirely, or like I'm not saying like no good ever comes of these things. More what I'm saying is I think it has a straight up negative effect on our cognition, and specifically cognition related to communication and language when we use these types of interfaces. So, for example, like I don't have Twitter. I haven't had Twitter for a long time. But like when you use those platforms, what I've seen is actually this was described well. Okay, I never listened to the Cumtown podcast, but I did listen to some of the Cumtown like greatest hits on YouTube for like probably in 2020 or something. And one thing that stuck with me is the host Nick describes how like he got he's a stand-up comedian and he got a Twitter, and suddenly he like isn't working on jokes anymore. He just kind of like gets the gratification out of like he has the idea for a joke, but he doesn't workshop it and turn it into something that he can really like do on the stage. He just tweets it and everyone thinks it's funny, and he's kind of satisfied with that. I think there's sort of a convenience of like I I don't know, you don't do the work of communication. And you could put a lot of work into these mediums, I guess. I guess you could workshop your tweets, but I don't think that's what most people are doing, or Instagram stories or whatever. I think it's very like just kind of flow state, like you just fire it off. And I think that we can't neglect that that is satisfying and it is cathartic to get your thoughts out in that way. But everyone knows who's used these things that once you start doing that, it changes how you think in the following days. You start thinking in tweets. You start thinking of like, oh, I should tweet that, or I should tweet that later, or you'll just tweet it right then and there. And then it's changing what you do. So I'm wary of all that stuff. Like, and YouTube comments too. It's the same thing. It's like everyone's been saying for decades that comment sections are terrible, but it really is like, it's kind of the medium is the message thing, because it's very hard for that medium to not just receive low effort garbage from people, or like emotion spiked garbage especially if it's something political. Like I see some really, really stupid political stories and people will like annotate them. They're just sharing like sensationalist news articles, but they annotate them like, yeah, like, wow, like, or like, I don't know, I didn't even know people were still like saying like this, or like this period over something they're sharing. But I've been seeing it lately, and that's not right. You shouldn't be on Instagram if that's how you're thinking about anything. If that's what you're doing, you just shouldn't be on Instagram. It's not a you problem, it's an Instagram problem. And you should, if that's what you're doing with your time and your brain power, you got to stop. So, but I think some posts are fine. Mostly, I think, mostly, like, if I had to decide to, like, let it ride or get rid of it, I would get rid of it, because these corporations all suck. The apps are pretty poorly maintained and poorly developed. Like, I run into bugs all the time on Instagram when I'm actually using it to, like, make posts. And yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so that's about that, but there's a flip side to it, which is I think we also have to be kind of charitable with other people, because this is what everyone is like now. So everyone is is like, communicating really poorly, and even thinking linguistically really poorly. They're like not able to handle the media infrastructure that they have been thrust into at all. Like, for example, like boomers obsessed with Candace Owens, or like there's a, I don't exactly know what's going on there, but it's not good. And it's not good, but you also have to be like kind to people who are like this, because they're having their brains melted. Basically, you're actually, they're being hurt by this, and like they are playing into it. They're choosing to do it, but who is strong enough to really overcome all of this? I don't know. It's very difficult. And also, a lot of those people, I mean, speaking of boomers specifically, although everyone's lonely, so there's an intense loneliness thing, but a lot of the older you get, the more people from your life have died. So there's an inherent deeper loneliness to being an older person. And yeah, I think people really do have to be like, don't engage in the arguments. The only thing worse than a comment is a rebuttal to a comment. And I'm guilty of all that stuff too. Sometimes I just, like, you really shouldn't post anything unless you're unless you're doing business or something. That's how I feel. Or if you're trying to get something done, not really doing business necessarily, but like, there's lots of posts you can make to the end of actually trying to develop a healthier sociality, or like a greater actual connection to people. But mostly I think those things are really wrecking people. So let's be mindful of that this year. And akin to that is this other idea, which is steel man arguments versus straw man arguments. Because it's very easy to hear someone describing something that they believe, or, you know, I don't know, just making an argument. Argument really is extremely broad as a concept. Like, most things are arguments. It is what it is. Like, it doesn't necessitate that it's emotional or antagonistic or even like polarized or anything. But like, lots of conversational things are in the form of an argument. You're kind of like, I don't know, convincing someone of something, or telling someone about something. But telling someone about something is in a way kind of convincing them of something. So anyway, so the idea of the straw man, hang on a moment. I haven't tried explaining this in a while, but let's say an argument is a man. So that's your base man, and then we're gonna have the straw man, like a scarecrow or something, and we're gonna have a steel man, which is your man wearing a full suit of armor, or maybe just, straight up a statue made of steel. Anyway, so when you're making this argument, it's very common for people to misrepresent what it is that you're trying to get at. And here's a deeper concept, which is when I'm describing something, my words are not, unless I'm really good at speaking, which I'm like kind of mid at speaking, you are not, it's hard to understand what I really mean, why I'm really saying it, because I'm coming up with just this like kind of, this boat full of holes, basically, which is my language trying to represent this ship that I have, and it's gonna sink. So you're just you're gonna get this sunken vessel version of what it is that I actually want to share. So the trick is to not look at this sunken vessel and just be like, bro, you're like, this sucks, like, this isn't a boat at all, this, or like, I can't use this is inapplicable. You look at the weakest parts of the argument and you're like, I guess there's two ways of looking at it. There's either you're looking at the weakest parts of the argument and you're targeting those, but you're kind of missing the greater point that I'm trying to bring, or you are just actually missing the point and making a big deal out of the missed point, in which case you're really like, that's a real straw man, because it's like, bro, I'm not even saying that. So there's kind of two versions. And similarly, well, yeah, on the other hand, what you can do when someone's talking to you about something, or maybe you're engaged in an argument, is you hear their argument and you're like, look, like, inside to yourself, you're like, look, I know, like, I could destroy this argument right now, like, if I just wanted to put this person down, because they're not making it very well, or because they're wrong about this kind of minor thing. But if they're trying to go somewhere else with this concept and you're just getting hung up on this minor thing, and that's not even essential to the argument, and that's where you're honing in, like, what are you in this for? You're not in this for the truth then. You're just in this to make someone feel bad. You're just in this to win a game, and that's gay. So you gotta you need to steel man the argument. You need to be like, okay, well, I see where they're going. They didn't do a very good job of making this argument, but I'm going to armor it up. I'm going to make it stronger. I'm going to patch all the holes in this boat, and then I'm going to try to destroy it, because I want to get to something I can use. I actually want to get to the truth, or get to something I can use, to come back to that concept of strategy. Like, yeah, I want to actually understand the world around me. I actually want to get somewhere, and I'd like to get there with other people. So we're having this argument, but let's build each other up. Let's actually not get hung up on some stupid bullshit. So related to that, this is moving on from the steel man and straw man concept, is just this kind of satisfaction with not knowing. And I don't think everyone needs to know everything. I think the beauty of the human experience is that we can all have very different experiences, and they all develop meaning for us. So I don't think everyone needs to be a politician. I don't think everyone needs to be like a genius. I don't think everyone needs to know what calculus even is. I don't think anyone needs to know anything necessarily. I want people to be able to live. So, and there's no pretensions about that concept. So, however, everybody loves to talk in our current society too, and we're bringing this kind of shallow reflexive junk that we do on the internet to real life. So I sell books on the street, and I talk to a lot of people on the street, and we wind up talking about ideas, because books come from people's minds, and they wrote them for a reason. So we wind up talking a lot about ideas. And again, I don't think everyone needs to be a philosopher, but there's just so much laziness with respect to the pursuit of thought. So there's really, like, sometimes you're offering something up, and like offering up an idea, and someone just kind of fires back. They like ping pong back across the table, just like the weakest thing you've ever seen. And it's like, and I know, like, and I'm not calling them dumb at all. Like, smart people will do this, because this is more a social behavior that we've learned. It doesn't even really have to do with their capacity for thought or reflection. It has to do with where they're letting themselves stop, like what they're really in it for. And for a lot of people, it's conversation, and that's okay. But when these conversations are about serious topics, and they're about how we're living our lives, and they're about the future, and they're about our moment, and they're about important things that we both would acknowledge are important, I think we all have a responsibility to do work in our minds, do work even on paper at home, really do work to understand what it is that we believe and what we want. Because there are no shortcuts for this. You have to do the work, you have to experience it, you have to digest it with your whole body. Like, these ideas are not things that I can just say to one guy that I met on the street 20 minutes ago, and then he's gonna like know what I meant, even most of the time. And I'm not saying that's because like I'm just saying that because we're different people. I don't understand what he's saying to me either in a certain way. Like, I don't understand how he came to it, who he is. Like, we don't understand each other. We don't have each other's experiences. We never will have a single one of each other's experiences. So again, there's like two sides to this, where it's like we have to be pushing for an intellectual rigor in our communication, but we also have to be humble, and we have to be charitable with other people, where we're not putting them down, we're not thinking they're stupid. We just like there's just two sides to this, and I think that's the only way we're really gonna figure out how to do anything, or how to make anything better in any of our lives. Like, we need to do that. So yeah, that's a little bit of that. And relatedly, we're going down the line of all this stuff we should be doing in 2026. So another one is just like having so much irony, or treating serious topics with flippancy, or like being sarcastic and ironic. I think it has its place, obviously, but in my generation, especially, like, I mean, I come from like an arts background, DIY music and all of that, and it's like the amount of people who just like seem totally checked out of making sense or sincerity or like caring about what their actions could do in the world is kind of depressing. So I think similar to the Patrick Henry thing, it's like, you know, well, that's not even not seeing what's in front of you. It's like maybe you see it and you're ignoring it. You're ignoring what you could even really do about it. You're writing it off, being helpless, whatever it is. But I think we're in a serious global strategic, or no, global security crisis. I think we're in a national security crisis, global security crisis. We're in a serious, like, never before seen crisis in the development of humanity, especially psychological reality for humanity. So I think that there's a lot of gravity to that, and we have to treat it with seriousness. We have to be honest about it. Like, we can joke, well, that's fine, but like I can't, like, the way that I think about this in my own life is people like that. I'm just walking past them this year. It's like I don't want to talk to people like that. I want to talk to people where I'm like, we're working on something and we care about our lives and we care about what we're doing with our lives. That's what I want. I want to be around the table, bunch of people, papers all over the table. We're arguing, we're figuring shit out, we're making dinner. That's, and if people just want to go to the DIY show and watch Netflix after, that's fine. But, and like, no shade to that. It's just like I literally feel like we're in a war zone. So, and like I don't know, around here there was just a shooting as well. It's like that's reality now. There's gonna be violence. There's already violence. There's violence everywhere, and it's gonna get worse. It's been getting worse. So I'd like to soberly assess that with people this year and plan accordingly, so that for the rest of my life, maybe we can all live with a little bit of dignity, make some choices that matter, and, have some fun. You only live once. All right, what else we got? Okay, yesterday I talked a little bit about this idea of yeah. Sorry. Yesterday we talked a little bit about this idea of a bifurcation that I see happening. That's just the first word that comes to mind. Computer science background, bifurcation, binary. It's just like a splitting into two. We're in a dual procedural system right now with AI and with social media and with the way everyone's living and with the miserable consequences, or no, miserable circumstances. Sorry. Like, we are in a situation where people are either atrophying their, I'll preface this real quick with I know some of you have heard me talk about this, but brain plasticity, often talked about as a positive thing. People are like, take lion's mane, you can, like, learn a new language at 40 years old. You can do all this stuff. The brain is so powerful. And I agree. The brain is so powerful. Love the brain. Love lion's mane. However, brain plasticity works in the reverse. So if you are living in a way that such that your brain learns to survive your brain may be learning that what it needs to do to survive is weaken itself. It's to emphasize all these other things that you do all day. It's to get, I don't know, better at your job, or to use your phone, or to do all these things that you're training it with. You're basically always training your brain. And that plasticity works in the other direction, and it doesn't bounce back. It could come back, but it definitely doesn't bounce back. You can't just light up all those parts of your brain again. It takes work. It takes actual durational work. You have to sit down and experience over time the exploration and strengthening of those parts of your brain and your body to get a lasting effect and have lasting positive brain plasticity, neurogeneration, whatever it is, And so with that as the preface, here's the bifurcation. Some people are atrophying their brain. Other people are maintaining or improving their neuronal health or overall health. I would consider this an important part of your overall health, maybe the most important part. So is, your brain. Well, I'm getting sweaty. That's crazy. I've never worn this shirt before. I told my mom I'm starting a talk show, and I was like, can you get me some clothes? Because I just wear clothes that I use as rags all the time. So anyway, bifurcation, use it or lose it. So everyone's losing it. We have to be people who are developing our potential to handle what's coming, our potential to handle anything, just adaptability in general. We should be adaptable, capable people. And instead, what you see in our society, and it's very sad that this is happening to children. I think that there's like extreme, I consider this abuse of human beings, what is happening to children being raised in our society right now. But like, yeah, people, it's becoming very normal to just like destroy your brain, destroy your dopamine circuitry, destroy your executive function. That is the norm right now. And people are aware of it, and they know that it's bad, but they're not checking each other on it. They're just kind of like, well, you got to live somehow. You got to tolerate our society somehow. And it's a really cruel situation, or it's just, yeah, it's a cruel situation, because this is like the means by which we are tolerating such an intolerable situation. It's like people throughout history would not have been tolerating this if they didn't have such highly available novelty, like distracting novel excitement all the time, like through the phone. It's like the bread and circuses concept, except it's with you all the time, and it is like pornographically like addictive. Like it's really, really lighting up your dopamine circuitry and getting you hooked on it. And that leads to a breed of person who will tolerate almost anything, tolerate miserable working conditions, undignified living conditions more broadly. So let's try to help people who are doing that to themselves. And also, let's make sure that we're using our own discipline and our own executive function to make sure that we're respecting our consciousness, we're respecting our brain, we're being careful. And going back to that surah from the Quran, we're urging each other to steadfastness against this. We're urging each other to the truth that would teach us to avoid these things and to protect ourselves. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, the way I wrote it down, someone in the chat yesterday talked about like fertilizer for the mind, and it's true. Like all this stuff is like bringing aridity to your mind, and it's just gonna like, it just starts pruning itself. It starts drying out at all the edges, and like you're like, oh, where's Serbia again? I don't know. You just lose so much shit. So yeah, protect yourself. And I know I've been talking about this the whole time, but I do have a little note on this here. But I think this situation is horrible, and we're talking about it in sort of a personal way right now. I don't think we're being selfish necessarily, but we're talking about the self, because that's where we have the most potential to make a difference. But this is happening to everyone, and I think, again, that requires being charitable to other people, because this is happening to everyone in your family, probably. This is happening to all the strangers on the street. This is happening to everyone. And I think the human experience is very valuable. I think human lives are very valuable. I do not want to see it so devalued. And we are just entering into, well, who knows what we're entering into, but we've been totally devaluing humanity, not to mention life in all other forms on the planet. Destroying the planet, destroying our minds. It's unbelievable. Like if you think about it at all, you would think you wouldn't participate in this in any way, and yet here we are. We're all in certain ways participating in it. So yeah, what else we got here? All right, a little bit more. We're more than halfway, I believe. So, yeah, so this is a little bit more of a nebulous note that I have. But getting into the realm of strategies for dealing with the situation and how it is trying to destroy your brain and the world and your body and your family and your nation and just like literally everything. The globe, animals, biodiversity and cultural diversity, you know, in this situation we find ourselves in where everything good about existence is being controlled and destroyed and eradicated. We should talk a little bit about some strategies and some that I do think have been helpful for myself, because I was like a very anxious child. I didn't know it at the time, and I had like depression and anxiety throughout my 20s. So I'm kind of a tense, anxious, a little dissociated in general, like as a default. So for me, it helps to avoid, or like to have. Oh, I meant to get another reading out. So if I have time at the end, I'll try to dig it out, because it's about this. So I don't forget. Yeah, but I wrote the need for silence, withdrawal, refusal, slowness, because we talked about this a little yesterday, and we'll talk about it a lot in the future. But just how speed affects our experience of the world right now, and the way it affects our experience of the world is by affecting the way we experience, which is through our nervous system. It's through our body. And I was thinking about this a little last night, because like I said, I went on the computer and I was watching videos, and I was like so antsy. I was just kind of like, I wasn't like like restless leg syndrome, kind of shaking my leg all day. But then when I was on the computer, it just came back to me, even though it was like 2 a.m. And so I was just like really wired. And I don't know why exactly, but that was wiring me. And there's something about the amount of stimulation that we experience over the course of the day where, like, I think it's important that we take time every day to wash that off of us, essentially, because you go out in the world and you're around like a bunch of like, I mean, it kind of feels sometimes like just a bunch of like psychotic people on their phones driving cars around, like just like not even paying attention. Like that's a horrible vibe to me personally. And then like you've got incoherent road pedestrian infrastructure, and you've got surveillance cameras and all this junk that just makes me feel like shit. But beyond that, I'm just talking about all the things we experience over the course of the day. Never mind if you have a job and you're stuck in a retail environment or something like that. Like 8 hours a day, that can be brutal. That is molding you in a certain way, and you're adapting to it in certain ways. And not all of those are bad, not all, but some of them are bad. And I think it's important when you come home to kind of like, wash isn't the perfect word, because I think of it more as like, I don't know, not even like molting or something, but like you just have to like get that off. Like it's like this hardened shell of desensitization where you're just like, oh, well, this kind of sucks, so I'll ignore it. And then you like, suddenly you have this kind of like force field, this like skin tight force field of like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it. And then that just builds up every day. And you're like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it. And then suddenly you're like, I think this is this is happening at like a mass level in our society where everyone's ignoring everything, but it happens at the personal level too. So you got to find ways to just like get that off of you. And I think exercise is good for that. I think meditation is good for that. Yoga, sensory deprivation, just like earplugs or eye mask or whatever, deep listening to music, body scan meditation. There's lots of little things where it's like, but the primary thing is not being distracted. You have to take time where you are not distracted. I have lots of books in my room, and if I'm doing something like this, I have to face the other side of the room where I can't see all the titles of the books, because that hijacks my psyche. Those perceptions play into the linguistic elements of my being, and then suddenly I'm processing the title of the book. So you have to make sure you're not being distracted in order to discover certain ways in which you're uncomfortable, or certain ways in which you have been wired over time. So I think that's valuable. I think that's something to keep in mind. We're in like such constant stimulation all the time. It's unbelievable. So yeah, take time to de-stimulate and chillax, you know? What else we got? I think, well, I guess I'll elaborate just a tiny bit on that there, because there's two sides to this. Like, I always used to think about this as like, yes, sometimes you need to just find somewhere to scream. And I so I always used to come at this from a place of hang on a sec. I always used to come at this from the frame of mind of relaxation, where I'm like, okay, I need to stretch. I need to do like slow movement or no movement. I have to like chill. That was how I would think about it. However, I mean, it's not paradoxical. It makes sense, but it, on the face sounds paradoxical. It's just like, in order to relax, you also have to exert. I think exercise goes a long way to help your body process everything, really. And I don't think it has to be particularly intense exercise, but there's something about like, in order to really relax, you need to exert, because you can't relax while you have, like, your body is a metabolic machine. It's producing energy, and that energy needs to be dispelled. It needs to be dispelled in certain ways, and also it needs to be produced. It needs to be triggered to produce that energy. There's all sorts of things that it wants that you can deprive it of. And when you start depriving it of this and messing with the energy flow of your body and eating in certain ways, and that plays into the metabolism, you start screwing yourself mentally. And I think that is easy to overlook in our culture, because there's a real mind-body separation, and we're a very cerebral culture. I mean, everyone's just like on the phone, like not even really looking at much else much of the time. Yeah, so in order to it was such an important moment for me when I realized, like, oh, to relax, I have to exercise. I have to exert. I have to start generating that energy in my body, and then that helps regulate your diet. It helps regulate the food that you need. It helps regulate your sleep. All of this stuff winds up playing in together. But it's so easy to ignore when we have that desensitized shell on, where we're not paying attention to what's out there and what's in here. Yeah. What else we got? Well, I should definitely, I mean, this is a little tangent, but the hope, like, yesterday was sort of it felt like a bootstrapping event, where I was like I had to pull myself up by my bootstraps, or that's also kind of a computer term, where like I just had to start this show, and I knew that I had to, because it's actually the same thing I'm talking about with the exercise, where it's like, okay, I can do all this mental work, and I can like talk about it a little bit here and there with my friends, but until I start actually really trying to communicate these ideas to people with my voice, with my actual body, they are not gonna sort themselves out. They're never gonna sort themselves out. I'm gonna die with a house full of paper that no one can read my handwriting on. And yes, and I don't want that. And this was a proof of concept. It felt good today, because I was like, man, yesterday there's so many things I could improve upon based on yesterday. And this was just some minimal preparation, but it's going a long way. It's already, it just feels like I'm flushing my system of all this like gunk that was preventing me from making sense of all these things that have been in my head for a while. And yeah, so that's cool. It feels good. I look forward to seeing whatever this turns into. I think I'm going to keep doing it. Oh, I know I'm going to keep doing it for a little while, but who knows? Tell your friends, like I said. Like and subscribe actually does kind of help with this. Hate to say it, but like I said at the beginning, I'm a YouTuber now, so like and subscribe. Don't leave a comment. I guess you can leave a comment, but I might turn them off because it's just like, dog. No, that's not how we should be communicating with each other. But I like the live chat. So anyway, what else we got? Well, we were kind of talking about, yeah, well, I had that geography example earlier, and I'll bring up a point about that. I was talking about how before we know it, our brains atrophy and our memories are weaker, and it's like you can't remember where a certain country is. And there are so many little things we can do that really improve our neuronal health, our brain health. And not only that, but I think they improve our existence personally. So one of those examples is learning geography. I think we should just all know where all the countries are. There's not that many of them. And yeah, learn the capitals, whatever, learn them all. There's a great site and app called Cetera, I guess I don't know, Setterra. Yeah, there's probably not two T's. Cetera, Setterra, I think. Great app. It's just like a little game where you can learn where all the countries are, all the cities are, all the big cities, and it rocks. I should brush up on it. But so that's one thing where it's just like, it's good to learn, it feels good to learn. However, with countries specifically, it shrinks the world in a very helpful way, because we're all plugged into this like global nervous system where we're aware of everything. We hear about all these countries. We kind of know what the Middle East looks like, and we kind of like, but we don't. We just kind of like, we have really vague notions of these things. And when you actually learn like what countries are where their capitals are, what countries they border, all of this stuff starts to become so much more coherent. I wish I had done it in high school. And yeah, that's awesome. I don't know another language. I assume learning a language also feels awesome and has immediate downstream positive consequences like that shrink the world, because, oh, I can read these other books now. I can talk to these other people now. That's probably awesome. I would love to do it, but that shit's hard. Well, that shit's hard because it's like, there's no support for it. It's just like, okay, I just have to go to an impersonal class, or like, I know you can get like, you could have like a nice relationship with a tutor or something. But yeah, and I could go to, I don't know, you could go to another country for a little while, but it's just, it'd be nice if we actually prioritized education, or our educational institutions were healthier and actually like life affirming, instead of just these like profit machines that are run as crazy bureaucracies by people. And all right, so I'll transition here. I'm sure there's other good examples I could think of other than geography and languages, but I mean, reading, period. Just read books, look at art, talk to people. All these things are good for your brain. Make sure you're not letting your brain get fucked up. But on that education note, I'll transition to this other thing. And okay, well, it's 6 p.m. in California, so I I maybe I would start earlier. I'm not really attached to 9 p.m. just kind of made sense. Just kind of makes sense. Anyway, yeah, so another thing I'm thinking about going into the new year and thinking with strategy again, and on the note of education, is the idea of para-academic institutions. And I mean that that sounds very official, but I just mean be engaged in intellectual and academic pursuits without going to college, without, I mean, if you're like on that track and you're in college and it's a good idea based on your own social standing and career aspirations, go for it by all means. But for the rest of us, I think, and I mean, I'm glad that I went to college, but for the rest of us or people who have left college and are like not necessarily engaged in intellectual pursuits, I think it is very valuable to, like, academia sucks. I think we can all kind of see that now. I mean, it's a real shell of what it was in previous centuries, and but that doesn't mean intellectual activity sucks. That doesn't mean what the university is supposed to stand for sucks, which is a social environment where people are engaged with ideas and the significance of what ideas are in these lives that we live on the planet. So I think we have to just bring that, like, the university's over. We have to be doing that in our own lives. Like, start a reading group, do research, really try to iron out your ideas with other people. It's like if you're interested in this stuff, like, with your friends, like, find the things you disagree on and, like, find out why, and, like, find out what you really believe about it. Just, like, I think we should be asking each other hard questions, not in an antagonistic way, but in a way where it's like we're just trying to learn from each other. Because especially for younger people who may be in college or even, like, you know, whoever, if you, like, none of this can be understood in a single, there's sort of this actually is a little bit of a paradox, maybe, where, like, none of this can all be understood in a single life. However, all we ever have is, like, our own singular life in mind to understand all of these things. And over the course of our lives, we should always be learning. We should always be growing and learning and developing our understanding. Some things you just can't understand when you're young until you're old, such as what it's like to be old and think back on it. And there's things I can't understand until I have kids, say, because that switches the whole perspective. I was born of parents, but I've never been a parent. So those are kind of more existential examples, but the point I want to make is, like, none of us have this all figured out, and we should be trying to figure out the things that we care about to the highest degree possible. I think that would be worthwhile, and the way to do that is to talk. It's to work and to talk. It's to develop your logical capacities with other people and then use them on the world. So, yeah, we're pretty much, we're getting pretty much done. Let me see here. There's a couple things I wrote. I mean, I kind of talked about this, the, like, don't get caught up in political division stuff. Like, do argue about viewpoints, but don't start running around with all this just, like, stupid culture war and politics stuff. Not to say that, I mean, obviously I think our moment's very important and we should be analyzing these ideas, but we shouldn't be talking, like, talking's for liars, as a friend of mine says. So, like, and I agree with that. It's like, if you're just talking about this stuff, like, come on, let's actually work on the stuff and talk about something else. Anyway, yeah, so with all that in mind, I think the final thing I was going to talk about, and it's brief, I already talked about it, is just, like, yeah, word of the year for me is strategy. Like, we should be able to accurately and soberly assess our situation in ourselves, around our society, in the world around us, in our social relationships. And we should be thinking, how do we want to live the rest of our lives? How do we want to survive on this planet? Where is the world going? How are we going to live a dignified life that is striving for something better? And how are we going to do the right thing? Concretely, how are we really going to do it? So that's kind of the final thing in my notes, just about thinking about the following year. But I'll talk a little more, because on that politics note, I don't know. Well, yeah, no, this goes along with strategy, because a lot of people, like, this goes along with Talkings for Liars and strategy, because we should be getting so concrete and singular about the things that we're talking about. We should be talking about what is real. We shouldn't be talking about hypothetical, like, whenever we're kind of like in an argument about like hypothetical things, let's try to at least be grounding it in our concrete situation. And a good example of this maybe is, like, people are always blaming capitalism for things. They're blaming billionaires for things. It's like, well, this connects to the Satara thing too. It's like, learn all the like, don't learn all of them. You can't. I mean, some people probably can, but like, learn the names of the billionaires. Like, who are you even talking about? Like, learn like 10 billionaires and how they got their money, like, all the way back. And then, yeah, like, I don't want to hear anyone talking about like billionaires in a hand wavy way. Nothing about capitalism in a hand wavy way. Get specific, because we're not in quote unquote capitalism. We're in a specific technological situation, and the analysis of capitalism is useful for understanding it to an extent, but it's certainly not the whole picture. And if you think it's the whole picture, you are not seeing what's in front of you. So yeah, that's that. How are you guys doing? You guys got any New Year's resolutions? Got any thoughts? Eventually, I said this yesterday, but I do want to have people call in to this show eventually. I think that would be pretty fun. Could be cool. Yeah. Hang on here. I'm not gonna do that just because you're telling me to. But yeah, I mean, I can look for those quotes if people are interested. But I think that was pretty solidly what I wanted to talk about. Let me throw a Q&A in the chat here. Yeah, so I will check out. So yeah, monologue's done. I'll look for that quote in this book here about Sufism, just to see if I can find it, about kind of washing off the day and the way that it hardens you. There's a verse in the Tao Te Ching that's quoted in Stalker by Tarkovsky that I would also pull up, but I don't know what number it is. I mean, maybe I should just go to bed because I am sick. But some other examples of just like how I think people who are intellectually inclined should be challenging themselves or challenging other people. Or no, just like with your friends, you should be talking about serious things. It's like one of those, just since I'm holding this book on Sufism, is like, do you believe in God? Like, why? What is God like? Like, these questions aren't off limits. These are actually things we should be discussing socially with each other because they have importance. I feel like we're just in a culture that is neglecting the importance of them. But yeah, to anyone just joining, we are just chilling, and you can go back and listen to the monologue if you would like. It will be archived. Well, this is not what I was looking for, but speaks to one of the things I was talking about earlier, where it's like, I don't know. He talks about trying to go through one day only saying what you mean, and how difficult of an experience that is. And that is sort of one of those. I didn't get go into detail on this as much as I probably could. I kind of grouped four concepts together: the like silence, withdrawal, refusal, and slowness. I mostly talked about slowness, or I talked about rejecting overstimulation, exploring like destimulation, just trying to avoid things that hijack your consciousness and change what you're processing or what you're thinking about. And one way to do that is to try to go through a day saying only things that you really mean, because there are just like, I mean, of course, there's all these reflexive parts of our psyche that are just they're just desperate to say something. They just want to, like, I don't know. That's where all of our filler words come from, or are like, oh, cool, or this or that. Like, those aren't really meaningful statements that are being processed by us in a deeper way. And it's pretty hard to go through a day doing that. But I think those sorts of exercises are good ways to understand who we are and to realize how overstimulated we are and all of the things that we're saying sort of frivolously. But yeah, I think I'm going to call it here if unless anyone has got anything to talk about, but I feel good. Well, I feel sick, but I feel good about that monologue. And yeah, I guess I'll read that one. I don't know. I'll just call it. That was a solid monologue. I'll be here tomorrow, 9:00. I'll try to find ways to advertise this that's less annoying than just emailing everybody or messaging people. 6 p.m. Okay. Yeah, I like the live chat. So, I wonder about 8, or I mean 6 is possible. The only thing I'm really considering with all of this is I would like to, whatever I choose, I would like to do it for a while. And naturally, I'm kind of a night person. I was going to do this at 8 p.m. I forget why I switched it to 9. I was probably just running late and hadn't told anyone the time it was going to be. So I last minute kind of changed it to 9 and stuck with it for the following days, assuming I'd always be running late. But yeah, and it requires that I just be I mean, I guess I could just start going to bed early. That's something I've always wanted to do in theory. So yeah, 7. See you 11. See you later. Yeah, 7. I mean, let's do it. I'll try it. We'll try it out. We'll see how the noise is affected, because I live above a like bar venue too. I don't think they're doing anything because they're on like a holiday break. But eventually, I don't know. This mic seems really actually like tightly only picking up sound from here. Like if I walk over here, it gets way quieter. So I think we'll be chilling for sound. It'll just be distracting me. But yeah, let's do 7. I'm down for that. I can commit, and I'll go to bed early, and I'll change my whole life in 2026. So sounds good, everybody. And I guess I will see you tomorrow at 7. Sounds good. Thanks for hanging out, and see you later.